The Household of Faith would like to invite you to worship with us. Worship services are held at the Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center, room LC 110. For more information, please visit www.IsraelTeach.com.
First, giving honor to the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and as always, it's a blessing. Anytime that I can share God's word, I truly am thankful for having an opportunity to do so. With that, we'll go ahead and get started with today's lesson, and the title is, To Receive God's Mercy and Forgiveness, You Must Be Merciful and Forgiving. This lesson is to show what God requires of us as Christians, and that is to be merciful and forgiving. A Christian means to be Christ-like. And Jesus was merciful and he was forgiving. And if we are to receive his mercy and forgiveness, we have to be as he is. And that's not an easy task, because remember, Jesus demonstrated his love towards us by showing us his mercy and forgiveness when we were yet sinners. As Paul said, Christ died for the ungodly. So to be merciful and forgiving as God is something we have to learn, because it goes against our very nature. The natural inclination of someone, if anyone offends or harms you, is to strike back. It is to get even at all costs. And society reinforces that behavior by teaching that you're supposed to utterly destroy your enemy, not show any kind of kindness or compassion whatsoever. But the Bible teaches us differently. It teaches us that when you get angry, you're not supposed to seek revenge or hold on to resentment as a result of that anger. And that in itself is a problem to a lot of people who consider themselves to be Christians, because they've been taught that you are not to even get angry. But as Paul said, be ye angry and sin not. You can get angry, but you're not to allow your anger to cause you to sin. You have to learn to be tolerant of judgment and be willing to relinquish the anger or resentment that you may feel towards someone who has offended or harmed you in some way. We're going to see in the course of this lesson, again, God is a merciful and forgiving God, and he requires us to be the same if we are to receive his mercy and forgiveness. And we're going to see that being merciful is more than being lenient in judgment. It is showing kindness and compassion to those in need, including one's enemy. And we're going to see what you're to do if someone commits an offense against you, as well as what you are to do if you are the one who has committed the offense. Because know with all certainty, conflicts will arise. What we have to do is to learn how to handle them. We're going to start this lesson off in Psalms 103. And again, the title is To Receive God's Mercy and Forgiveness, You Must Be Merciful and Forgiving. Psalms 103, and we're going to see that the God we serve is a merciful and forgiving God. Psalms 103 and verse number 8. You go ahead when you get there. What does it say?
The Lord is merciful and gracious.
Go ahead.
Slow to anger and plenteous in mercy.
Again, God is a merciful God, and we should be thankful for that. He said the Lord is merciful and gracious and slow to anger, and he is plenteous in mercy. His mercy is everlasting. But go ahead.
He will not always chide, neither will he keep his anger forever.
He's not going to hold on to his anger always, even though he is justified in his wrath. He said he's not going to always strive, neither will he keep his anger forever. Go ahead.
He hath not dealt with us after our sin, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities.
Again, he's been merciful. He said he's not yet dealt with us with our sins. Not yet, but understand, there's a price to be paid. He said he's not yet dealt with us with our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities. Verse number 17, and go ahead.
But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear him.
Again, God is plenteous in mercy. He said, and the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon those that fear him, and that those that obey him. But go ahead, he's going to let you know.
And his righteousness unto children's children.
Again, who is he going to extend this mercy to? Go ahead, verse 18.
To such as keep his covenant And to those that remember his commandments to do them.
Again, those that are obedient unto God, those are the ones that's going to receive his mercy. Turn over to Luke, the 6th chapter. Because you have to keep God's commandments. Those are the ones that he's going to show his mercy unto. And here, Jesus is going to tell us that we also have to be merciful and forgiving as he is. Luke 6, and pick it up at verse number 27. Luke 6 and 27. You go ahead when you get there.
But I say unto you which hear, love your enemies, do good to them which hate you. Again,
those of you that have understanding, and this is a difficult thing to do. He said, but I say unto you which hear, talking about what spiritual is, he said, you love your enemies and do good to them that hate you. Verse 28, go ahead.
Bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you.
Again, the task that we have at hand is not an easy task. As I said, it's difficult. Because the mercy and compassion that you are to extend, the forgiveness that you are to give, is to those that you will have a problem with, which is your natural inclination is to harm them. If someone harms you, what's your natural instinct? It's to strike back. And Jesus here is saying you got to love your enemies. And it's easy for us to do for those that we're familiar with, those that we're acquainted with, those that so-called that we like. But if an individual has offended you, first thing you got on your mind is you better get out of my face. But that's not how you are to handle it. He said you got to love your enemies. You cannot be partial in your treatment of others. He said love your enemies. Do good to them. Not just your friends, but even to those that hate you. You got to show kindness and compassion, because is that not what God did? We were yet his enemies. We were sinners when he sent his son to die for the sins of the world. He said, bless them that curse you, and you pray for them which despitefully use you. And what you're praying is that they come into the understanding of the true and living God. And that may cause them to change their ways. But drop down to verse number 31 and go ahead.
And as ye will that men should do to you,
what?
Do ye also to them likewise.
Again, you got to treat others as you want to be treated, and that includes your enemies. Your ill feelings is not justification for doing another wrong. If a person harms you in some way, you're not justified in saying, well, now I'm going to harm them. You're not to seek revenge. We're going to seek. You are to resolve the conflict to the best of your ability. But again, you're not seeking to do them wrong. This is not I'm going to get even. He said, and as ye would that man should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. Would you not desire mercy if you were in a position that you were in need of it? Well, what he's asking then is you extend the same mercy that you would desire. But go ahead.
For if you love them which love you,
what
thank have ye? For sinners also love those that love them.
That's easy to do. He said, if you love those that love you, he said, what thanks have ye then? He said, because sinners also love those that love them. Verse 33, and go ahead.
And if you do good to them which do good to you,
what
thank have ye? For sinners also do even the same.
I'm going to do good to those that I know are going to reciprocate. I know that they're going to in turn do something for me. He said, what good have you then? Go ahead. Verse number 34.
And if ye lend to them of whom ye hope to receive, what thank have ye? For sinners also lend to sinners.
Go ahead.
To receive as much again. But love ye your enemies, and do good and lend, hoping for nothing again. And your reward shall be great.
Go ahead, because the Lord is going to reward you. He said, look, if you lend to them of whom you hope to receive, he said, what thanks have you? He said, sinners also lend to sinners, to receive as much again. He said, but again, you got to love your enemies and do good and lend, hoping for nothing again. And your reward is going to be great. Because if you lend unto the poor, the Lord is going to reward you. And what? Go ahead and finish that.
And ye shall be the children of the highest.
Go ahead.
For he is kind unto the unthankful and to the evil.
We ought to be as our God is. We're to be as Jesus is. He said, you're going to be the children of the highest, for he is kind unto the unthankful and to the evil. Therefore, how are we to be? Go ahead.
Be ye therefore merciful, as your Father also is merciful.
So if you want to receive God's mercy, you got to be obedient to his commandments. And his commandments is whatever comes out of the mouth of God is our commandment. He said, be ye therefore what? Be ye therefore merciful as your Father also is merciful. So if you want to receive God's mercy, you have to be merciful. You have to extend kindness and show compassion to even those that hate you, that have despitefully used you. But understand, that does not mean that you're supposed to be somebody's doormat. That does not mean that you are supposed to allow somebody to abuse you. You have to approach this, I'm going to say it like it is. You have to use some common sense. And we're going to see as we go along. But if a person is truly in need, and you have the opportunity or the means by which to help them, you have to overlook whatever it is that you hold against them. You should relinquish that anyway. And then you have to extend a helping hand. That is if a person is in need. And with discretion, you understand the difference between need and want. But go ahead. He said, you got to be merciful as your Father also is merciful. And do what?
Judge not. Ye shall not be judged.
Go ahead.
Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned.
Keep your finger here. We coming right back. Turn over to John, the 7th chapter. Because it said, judge not, and ye shall not be judged. And people often quote this, saying, see, you're not supposed to judge a brother. If you say something to an individual because of what they've done, they'll say, well, see, you're not supposed to be judging, brother. And they'll quote this and they're taking it out of context. The Lord is not saying you are not to judge. The word of God is what will judge. What he's saying is this, 7 and verse number 24. What does he say?
Judge not according to the appearance.
But what?
But judge a righteous judge.
He said you judge righteous judgment. Don't judge in accordance to the circumstances or the appearance of things, how you see them, not understanding or knowing the actual facts. He's not telling you, though, not to judge. If a person does something wrong, his actions and the word of God is what judges. He said, judge not and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not and ye shall not be condemned. Again, don't judge unrighteously, falsely accusing someone, and then you won't be condemned. But go ahead. What else are we supposed to do?
Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven.
Again, you got to be merciful, and you have to be forgiving if you want to receive God's mercy and forgiveness. Turn to Matthew, the 5th chapter. Because Jesus, again, is going to reiterate the need for us to be merciful. Matthew 5. And this is what people refer to as the Beatitudes. And he's telling them how blessed, what's going to happen with those that are blessed. Pick it up at verse number 3. Read verse number 3. So we can understand the context in which Jesus is speaking here. 5 and 3, and go ahead.
Blessed are the poor in spirit.
Go ahead.
For theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Go ahead.
Blessed are they that mourn.
What?
For they shall be comforted.
Go ahead.
Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth.
So he's talking about those that are meek and humble, and how they're going to inherit the earth, how they're going to get into his kingdom. When he said, blessed are the poor in spirit, he said, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's going to be a heavenly kingdom, because God is going to be here on this earth with man. He said, and blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And blessed are the meek. Again, the poor in spirit, he said, because they are going to inherit the earth. But who else is going to be blessed? Verse number 7. Go ahead.
Blessed are the merciful.
Why?
For they shall obtain mercy.
Again, if you want God's mercy, then if you want him to be merciful unto you, you have to be merciful unto others. Turn over to Psalms 18. Because we're going to see when he said, blessed are the merciful, because they're going to obtain mercy. He was quoting what he said here out of the mouth of David. Talking about what God was going to do for him. Psalms 18, and pick it up at verse number 20. Psalms 18 and verse number 20. Go ahead when you get there.
The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness.
And again, this is Jesus talking to the mouth of David. He said, the Lord has done this. He's rewarded me. He said, according to my righteousness. Go ahead.
According to the cleanness of my hands hath he recompensed.
Because what had he done? What was it that he did that he received God's reward? Go ahead.
For I have kept the ways of the Lord.
Uh-huh.
And have not wickedly departed from my God.
Jesus was without sin. Go ahead.
For all his judgments were before me.
Uh-huh.
And I did not put away his statutes from me.
No. Go ahead.
I was always upright before him.
Uh-huh.
I kept myself from mine iniquity.
See, no man can say this, but Jesus can, because he was a man without sin. No other man can say that he was without sin. He said, I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Therefore what?
Therefore hath the Lord recompensed me according to my righteousness.
Uh-huh.
According to the cleanness of my hands in his eyesight.
Jesus came. He submitted his will to that of the Father, and he shed his blood for the forgiveness of our sins. And he walked this earth. And as a man in the flesh, he kept all of God's commands. He was obedient unto death. And as a result of his obedience, God raised him from the dead. That is the reward that we all should be seeking. Because if we don't live until the second coming of the Lord, all of us are going to face death. But we all need God's mercy. Because unlike Jesus, we've sinned. We've offended the Lord. So we need his mercy and his forgiveness. But he's telling us what we need to do in order to receive that mercy. We just read what he said in Matthew. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. He's going to say it again. Verse 25, and go ahead.
With the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful.
That's what the Lord is going to do. And that's why you're going to be blessed if you're merciful. Because you're going to receive God's mercy. He said, with the merciful, thou wilt show thyself merciful. Go ahead.
With an upright man thou wilt show thyself upright.
God is going to reward a man in according to what it is that he does. Turn over to Matthew, the 23rd chapter. Matthew 23. Jesus received God's mercy because he was merciful and forgiving. He received his mercy because of his obedience, and he points out the need for us to be obedient, including being merciful as he commanded us to be. He told us to be merciful and to be forgiving. It's not enough just to worship God being ritualistic, doing that which is ceremonial. That's required. Attending a holy convocation, that's required. Observing the dietary laws, that's required. Observing God's holy days, that's required. But there's more to it than that. And that's what Jesus is pointing out here. Matthew 23 and verse number 1. You go ahead when you get there.
Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples.
What did he tell them?
Saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat.
Because they're the ones leading the people. Go ahead.
All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe.
They know what they're talking about. They have some knowledge. He say, all therefore whatsoever they bid you, you observe. Go ahead.
That observe and do.
But what?
But do not ye after their works. For they say and do not.
But don't follow or use them as an example. Because they're being hypocritical. They're being hypocrites. And he lets you know. Drop down to verse number 23. Because what is it that they're doing? Go ahead.
Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees.
Go ahead.
Hypocrites. For you pay tithe of men and eyes and come. Have omitted the weightier matters of the law.
See, they make an outwardly show of serving the Lord. He said, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees. He called them hypocrites. He said, you pay tithes of men and an ass and come, but you've omitted the weightier matters of the law. What have they left undone? Go ahead.
Judgment, mercy, and faith.
He said, but judgment, righteous judgment, and mercy and faith, they've omitted. Go ahead.
These ought ye to have done, not to leave the other undone.
He said, you got to do it all. You cannot be partial in your worship and service to God. Again, they were being ritualistic, but what he called the weightier matters, the spiritual things, they were not doing. Righteous judgment and mercy, compassion, true faith. He said, these ye ought to have done, and not to leave the other undone. Turn over to Micah, the 6th chapter. You got to obey all of God's commandments in your service and worship to him. Jesus had been warning us about being ritualistic in our approach in serving him. Here, Jesus had Micah to warn Israel of doing that very same thing. Micah 6, and pick it up at verse number 6. 6 and 6. You go ahead when you get there. Because he's talking to those who call themselves serving the Lord. Go ahead.
Wherewith shall I come before the Lord? Bow myself before the high God.
Go ahead.
Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old?
What do I need what do I need to have to present myself before the Lord? He said, wherewith shall I come before him and bow myself before the high God? He said, shall I come before him with burnt offering, with calves of a year old? Shall I come with that which is needful for a sacrifice? Go ahead.
Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil?
Would that please the Lord? If I gave him all of this, he said, will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Go ahead.
Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression?
Shall I sacrifice? He said, my firstborn for my sin. Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression? Go ahead.
The fruit of my body for the sin of my soul?
Go ahead.
He has showed thee, O man, what is good.
But he said he showed you what it is that you need to do. He showed you what it is that he desires. Go ahead.
And what doth the Lord require of thee?
And what is that?
But to do justly.
Go ahead.
And to love mercy. And to walk humbly with thy God.
Is that not what Jesus said? That's what God is requiring of us. He's not looking for sacrifices. He is looking for us to do that which is right and just. He is looking for us to be as he is. He is looking for us to show kindness and compassion, to be merciful, and to be forgiving. He said, he's shown thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. Turn over to 1 Samuel, the 24th chapter. God requires us to submit our will unto his will. He requires us to be obedient unto him. And if we truly are obedient unto him, then we're going to be as he is. We're going to be merciful. And we're going to be forgiven. And God's servants understood that. This is David, a man after God's own heart. And look what it is that David did. Pick it up at Samuel 24 and verse number 1. Because I say, what did Jesus say? Love your enemies and do good to them. I said, that's not an easy thing to do. But David is going to demonstrate that it can be done. 24 and verse number 1. You go ahead when you get there.
And it came to pass, when Saul was returned from following the Philistines.
Go ahead.
And it was told him, saying, Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi.
Now, Saul is in pursuit of David to take his life. And for no reason whatsoever. David has not done any wrong. He said, when Saul had returned from following the Philistines, it was told him, he said, David's in the wilderness of En-Gedi. He said, what happened? What happened? Verse number 2. I'm sorry. What happened in verse number 2?
Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and went to seek David and his men upon the rocks of the wild goats.
And he's seeking him to kill him. But go ahead.
And he came to the sheepcotes,
because something's going to take place here.
By the way where was a cave. And Saul went in to cover his feet.
Go ahead.
And David and his men remained in the sides of the cave.
Now, Saul has entered into a cave, and David and his men are there in hiding. And Saul is unaware. It's unbeknownst to him that he is now in danger. Go ahead, verse number 4. What happened?
And the men of David said unto him,
Go ahead.
Behold, the day of which the Lord said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thine hand.
Go ahead.
And thou mayest do to him as it shall seem good unto thee.
And then what did David do? Because Saul again is now vulnerable. And David, he's seeking David's life. This is David's true enemy. And he has put himself in a position where David can take him out. He said, the man of David said unto him, Behold, the day of which the Lord said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thine hand, that thou mightest do to him as it shall seem good unto thee. What did David do? Go ahead.
And David arose and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe pipe. And it came to pass afterward.
And it shows you the position that Saul was in. David got up and he cut the skirt of Saul of his robe without him knowing it. He could have easily cut his throat as opposed to cutting that robe. And he would have been justified, I'm sure, in his mind, because here's a man that's trying to kill me. And now, as they say, he done slipped, and I'm going to take full advantage of it. It's like you're in a fight and somebody slips and falls. Do you extend your hand to them? No. It's your natural inclination. You stomp him while he's on the ground. That's what people do. David being pursued by Saul for no reason. And then he went in here and put himself in a position. Instead of cutting his throat, he simply cut a piece of his robe. And then what did David do? Go ahead.
And he said unto his men, Lord forbid that I should do this thing unto my master.
Verse number 5. Read that for him.
And it came to pass afterward that David's heart smote him, because he had cut off Saul's skirt.
That even troubled him, that he even went to that extent. Verse 6, and go ahead.
And he said unto his men, Lord forbid that I should do this thing unto my master.
To do what?
The Lord's anointed, to stretch forth mine hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord.
And Saul was anointed of the Lord. But you could also read and see where the Lord's Spirit had departed from Saul and the evil spirit had come upon him. That's why he's doing what he's doing. Saul is not operating with any wisdom. Not any wisdom from God. But David had bothered David that he would even raise up his hand to the Lord anointed. Verse 7, and go ahead.
So David stayed his servants with these words.
What?
And suffered them not to rise against Saul.
Go ahead.
But Saul rose up out of the cave and went on his way.
They wanted to harm Saul, and he wouldn't allow that to take place. And so Saul got away. Go ahead, verse number 8. And what took place?
David also arose afterward and went out of the cave and cried after Saul, saying,
What?
My lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him,
Saul had no idea what had taken place. David called unto him and said, My lord, the king. Go ahead.
David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed himself.
Still paying homage to this man again. A man who was seeking to kill him for no reason. Go ahead, verse number 9.
And David said to Saul,
Go ahead.
Wherefore hearest thou men's words, saying, Behold, David seekest thy hurt?
He said, where have you heard this where somebody can say that I've sought to do you harm? Nobody can say that. Go ahead.
Behold, this day thine eyes have seen how that the Lord had delivered thee today into mine hand in the cave. And some bade me kill thee.
He said, some were telling me, encouraging me, begging me to kill you. Go ahead.
But mine eyes spared thee.
But he showed him mercy. Go ahead.
And I said, I will not put forth mine hand against my Lord.
Why?
For he is the Lord's anointed.
He said, but I wouldn't do it. Because you're the Lord's anointed. Therefore, I would not kill you as those that had begged me to. Go ahead. Verse number 11.
Moreover, my father, see.
What?
Yea, see the skirt of thy robe in my hand.
Why?
For in that I cut off the skirt of thy robe, I killed thee not.
He said, I could have killed you. Instead of cutting off the skirt of your robe, I could have been cutting your neck. I could have killed you, but I did it not. Go ahead.
Now know thou and see that there is neither evil nor transgression in my hand.
He said, there's no malice in my heart. Even though he had been chasing him around the countryside. He said, see, there is neither evil nor transgression in mine hand. And I've what?
And I have not sinned against thee.
He said, I've not done you any wrong. Go ahead.
Yet thou huntest my soul to take.
But you still seeking to kill me. Drop down to verse number 16 and go ahead.
And it came to pass, when David had made an end of speaking these words unto Saul.
What did Saul tell him? Go ahead.
Saul said, is this thy voice, my son David? Saul lifted up his voice and wept.
Go ahead.
And he said to David,
what?
Thou art more righteous than I.
He was truthful in that. Go ahead.
For thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil.
He said, you've been righteous, David, because you've rewarded good for evil. Go ahead. And that's what the Lord is requiring us to do, is he not? Did he not say, love thy enemy and do good unto them? He said, you are more righteous than I am. He said, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I rewarded thee evil. Go ahead.
And thou hast showed this day how that thou hast dealt well with me. For as much as when the Lord had delivered me into thine hand, thou killedest me not.
He said, even though you had the opportunity to kill me, David, you didn't exercise that opportunity. David could have easily ended Saul's life and ended his own problems. As I said, Saul had 3,000 men with him looking to kill David. Go ahead.
For if a man find his enemy, will he let him go well away?
He said, look, if a man find his enemy, will he allow him to get away the way in which David had allowed Saul to escape? Wherefore what?
Wherefore the Lord reward thee good for that thou hast done unto me.
He said, the Lord is going to reward you good for what it is that you've done unto me. And he did reward David. But again, God, what did Jesus say? Blessed are the merciful, because they're going to receive mercy. Saul told him, the Lord reward you good for that thou hast done unto me this day. Turn over to Proverbs 21. David spared Saul's life, and later the Lord spared David's life. But Saul said, the Lord reward you good for what you've done. He's going to reward him for his mercy. Proverbs 21. We're going to read one verse. Because Jesus said the merciful was going to be blessed. And Solomon is going to tell us the reward that they're going to receive. Proverbs 21 and verse 21. You go ahead when you get there.
He that followeth after righteousness and mercy findeth the life.
And the life that he's talking about, we're going to see, is life eternal. He said, he that followeth after righteousness, he that doeth righteousness and shows mercy, is going to find life. Go ahead.
Righteousness and honor.
Turn over to Proverbs 19. Because again, we're going to see that the life that Solomon is talking about is life eternal. But before that, we're going to see that being merciful is more than just being lenient and judging, as David was. Proverbs 19 and verse number 17. Because it is also showing compassion to those that are less fortunate, even those that are your enemies. 19 and 17. Read that. Go ahead.
He that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord.
He say, he that shows compassion, he that is merciful towards the poor, he lendeth unto the Lord. Go ahead.
And that which he hath given will he pay him again.
Again, the Lord is going to repay him. Turn over to Matthew 25. And Jesus gave us this parable to illustrate what Solomon was talking about. And to show the blessing of the mercy. Matthew 25, and pick it up at verse number 31. This is Jesus talking about his second coming and what it is that he's going to do. 25 and 31. You go ahead when you get there.
When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him.
Go ahead.
Then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory.
He said, now when Jesus returns, he said, all the holy angels, he said, and all the holy angels with him, then he's going to sit upon the throne of his glory. Because he's coming back and he's going to establish his kingdom here on this earth. That's why he said it's going to be a heavenly kingdom, though, because God is going to be amongst men. And what is he going to do? Go ahead, verse 32.
And before him shall be gathered all nations.
He's on the earth. Go ahead.
He shall separate them one from another. As a shepherd divideth the sheep from the goats.
Go ahead, and we're going to see what's going to take place with the sheep. Go ahead.
And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left.
What is he going to tell the ones on his right hand? Go ahead.
Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand,
go ahead.
Come ye blessed of my Father.
What's going to take place?
Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world.
Those are the ones that is going to get into God's kingdom. And remember, this is an everlasting kingdom. And in order for you to inherit something that is to last forever, that must mean that you are going to live forever. He said, then shall the king say unto them on the right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Verse 35, go ahead, because we're going to see why they are getting into God's kingdom. Go ahead.
For I was in a hungered and ye gave me meat.
Go ahead.
I was thirsty and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger and ye took me in.
Go ahead.
Naked and ye clothed me. I was sick and ye visited me.
Go ahead.
I was in prison and ye came unto me.
They had pity and compassion. They were merciful. They were kind-hearted. He said, I was hungry and you gave me meat. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. When I was sick, you visited me. I was in prison and you came unto me. Verse 37, go ahead.
Then shall the righteous answer him, say, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and feed thee?
Go ahead.
Or fed thee, or thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger and took thee in?
Go ahead.
Or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee?
Jesus had told them all the things they had done. And they said, when have we ever done this unto you, Lord? When did we see you hungry and we fed you, or thirsty and we gave you to drink? When did we see you in need and took you in, or in prison and came and visited thee? What did Jesus tell them? Go ahead. Verse 40.
And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren,
go ahead.
Ye have done it unto me.
Again, didn't Solomon say the one that had pity unto the poor, lended unto the Lord? He said, the king answered and said unto him, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you've done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you've done it unto me. It is the merciful, the kind, those that show compassion, those are the ones that are going to get into God's kingdom. You have to be obedient to his commandments, but you got to be obedient to all his commandments. Did he not command us when he said, be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful? And also, you have to be forgiving if you want to be forgiven. You have to have the same attributes as God if you are going to dwell with God throughout all of eternity. And that's what this life is about. It's about you preparing for the life to come. It is about you changing yourself, knowing what the will of God is, and submitting yourself unto his will. Turn over to James, the 2nd chapter. James 2. Because Jesus said, what you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. And James is going to reiterate the need for us to show compassion to those who are less fortunate. James 2. And pick it up at verse number 14. 2 and 14. You go ahead when you get there.
What does it profit, my brethren? Though a man say he hath faith and have not works, can faith save him?
Now he asked the question. He's going to give an example to illustrate what it is he's saying. He said, because what does it profit? He said, my brother. He said, though a man say he has faith and have not works, he said, can what he says or the profession of his belief save him? Go ahead, verse number 15. He's going to give you an example. Go ahead.
If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled.
You're wishing them well wishes. But what?
Notwithstanding ye give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit?
But you're not doing those things that they're in need of. You're not providing them what it is that they need. First and foremost, this shows you have the means to do it and the opportunity. And you're not exercising compassion. You're not being merciful in your approach. You're telling them good things. You're saying nice things. But your actions are not lining up with your words. He said, if a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, depart in peace and be warmed and filled. That sounds good. But that's not going to warm anyone. That's not going to feed them. That's not going to shelter them. He said, but notwithstanding, you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit? Go ahead, verse 17.
Even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone.
He said, look, if a man say he has faith, but then his actions does not demonstrate that, can his faith save him? He said, even so that faith, if it have not works, is dead, being alone. It's not going to profit him, just as what he said did not profit the brother or sister that was in need. And keep in mind, when you look at this world, because of the wickedness of man, you see poverty all around you. You see people in dire situations. And it can be overwhelming if you allow yourself to be consumed by it, because there's no way possible for you to correct this situation. Jesus said, the poor will always be with you. When you find yourself in need, if you find yourself given an opportunity to help somebody, then you help them. Don't look at them and say, well, they need to be in this position. They must have done something that caused this despair that they find themselves wallowing in. As the saying goes, thereby, by the grace of God, there go I. Most people are one paycheck from starvation, from hunger, from being homeless. It's a blessing. I'm going to tell you, when I look at my age and I look back on my life and I say the Lord brought me through it all. Because you see so many people that are struggling and that have worked hard. The people that were employed by Enron, did they do anything wrong other than put in an application and go work for a company with some scurvy people that was ahead of it? But that's a lot of the corporations that you have in America. When you look at, I'm not going to, let me go on, I'm going to deal with my lesson. I ain't dealing with these. As the Lord say, you're going to always have the poor with you. And the reason why is because of the wickedness of men. And even though you can have compassion, you can care about it, you cannot correct this situation. But given an opportunity, when you can do something, then you do that. But turn over to Hosea, the 6th chapter. Because again, we're going to see the importance of being merciful, showing compassion towards others. Because here, the Lord is telling us about the problem with Israel. And we're going to find the problem is that they didn't have compassion. They showed no mercy. 6, and pick it up at verse number 4. 6 and 4. You go ahead when you get there.
O Ephraim, what shall I do unto thee? O Judah, what shall I do unto thee?
Again, Ephraim refers to the 10 tribes of Israel. Judah referred to the 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and part of Levi. He said, O Ephraim, what shall I do unto thee? O Judah, what shall I do unto thee? Meaning Israel, what shall I do unto you? Why?
For your goodness is as a morning cloud, and as the early dew it goeth away.
He says, flee. Go ahead.
Therefore have I hewed them by the prophets.
He said, I've hewn them in pieces. He said, by the prophets. And how did he do it? By the prophets. Go ahead.
I have slain them by the words of my mouth.
Again, he had the prophets to pronounce the evil that was going to come upon them for their wrongdoing. But go ahead.
And thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth.
Go ahead. Verse number 6.
For I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offering.
He said, I desired mercy. He said, and not sacrifice. He said, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offering. You're to know the will of the Lord and do it. He again desired them to show mercy and compassion. But turn over to Matthew, the 12th chapter. But they wouldn't. Matthew 12. Now Jesus said, judge with righteous judgment, did he not? And we're going to see that you need to be merciful in order to do that. You need to show compassion in order to do that. Because he said, don't judge in accordance to appearance. Matthew 12, and pick it up at verse number 1. Here the Pharisees are going to unjustly condemn Jesus and the disciples. Go ahead. Matthew 12 and 1.
At that time Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn. And his disciples were in a hunger, and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat.
Because they were ministering to others. And oftentimes they didn't have the opportunity to eat. So in the looking to serve others, they were neglecting themselves. It says at that time Jesus on the Sabbath day, he said at the time Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples, they were hungry, they began to pluck the ears of the corn and began to eat. And what took place? Verse number 2.
But when the Pharisees saw,
what?
They said unto him, behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day.
They began unjustly condemning Jesus and the disciples. He said, behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to be done upon the Sabbath day. They're not understanding sometimes emergencies or things of need will take place of the law, and the law may not be able to be fulfilled. And Jesus is going to show them that. Verse number 3. What did he tell them?
But he said unto them, have ye not read what David did when he was an hungered, and that they were with him?
What?
How he entered into the house of God, and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests.
Again, out of emergency, sometimes you may not be able to uphold the law. Each Sabbath, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. Cease from all your labors, are you not? I work every Sabbath. My son comes, he He's working right now. Reading. We used to meet at our house. My wife would labor, trying to get things ready. We would always be working. But you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. But understand, you cannot just look at the appearance. You have to look at the circumstances and find out the actual facts before you can come to a conclusion. And what they did was immediately look at it and say, what you are doing, your disciples are doing, it is unlawful what it is they're doing. But go ahead. Verse number 5.
Or have ye not read in the law how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless?
And it's because they're working, are they not?
Right.
But then it says, have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath day the priests in the temple, they profane the Sabbath, but they're blameless. But their work is for the Lord. And so he pardons the sacrifices that they're making. He pardons the things that they are doing. Go ahead.
But I say unto you, that in this place is one greater than the temple.
What?
But if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice.
So he just quoted what we read in Hosea. He said, but if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. What?
Ye would not have condemned the guiltless.
He said, if you had just known what it meant when the Lord said, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, he said, then you would have not condemned the guiltless. They unjustly condemned them for what it was that they were doing. But turn over to, verse number 8. Thank you.
For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day.
Turn over to Luke, the 18th chapter. Here it is. They condemning Jesus. Jesus is the Messiah. They condemning him about what he was doing on the Sabbath day. And he is the one that gave us the Sabbath. And I'm not talking about when he gave to Moses in Israel. I'm talking about all the way back in Genesis, the 2nd chapter. When it finished up the creation. But he rested on the Sabbath day and he blessed that day. But Luke 18. Because the Pharisees made a judgment not knowing the full set of circumstances. And they erred in their judgment. And again, Jesus gave the following parable to show that when you lack compassion, it will cloud your judgment. 18 and verse number 9. 18 and 9. You go ahead when you get there.
And he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves.
They had knowledge, but they truly lacked understanding, as we're going to see. Go ahead.
That they were righteous and despised others.
How can you call yourself serving the true and living God, but then you will look down on others? You will despise others. And again, understanding. There's nothing wrong with condemning something that is wrong. But oftentimes, brothers will come into the word and get some understanding, and then they will look down on others. But then if they just look back 5 minutes ago, they was doing the same thing. They will beat a person that go to church on Sunday, which is the wrong day, will beat them up and down. Talk about those that observe Christmas like a dog. But it probably wasn't too long ago that they were exchanging gifts. That they was trying to get up under the mistletoe. That they was dealing with the traditions of men. See, I'm not saying it's right. I know it's wrong. The word is telling you it's wrong. But don't lift yourself up by the tearing down of others. You lift yourself up by doing that which is right. And even that, you're not to exalt yourself. Because if you are obedient unto this word all the way to the end, you still ain't done enough. You still, what the book say, at your best. You're as filthy rags. So it's not about, and I've never taken that position about what's going on with other people. Because other people don't have anything to do with me getting into God's kingdom. What he's going to judge me on is what I do, not what other people do. I can't find in this book where the Lord is grading on a curve. And by saying, because you're so righteous and the rest of these wretched people, I'm going to save you. It don't work that way. Instead of concerning oneself about other people, as they say, first look at the man in the mirror. Clean that up. And then you can deal with other people. But even in that, it's not just for the fact of condemning them. Somehow that's making somebody feel good about themselves. Because like I say, being ritualistic in your approach to worshiping God is not enough. Attending the Sabbath. You can attend every Sabbath that is. But if you don't have the right spirit, you got to be righteous 24 hours